Hello and welcome to our presentation. Thank you for joining us. Our presentation is about choosing the right university for you, where to go and how to get there. My name is Brian Maher and I work on the international team here at the College Board. And I am joined by my colleague Elizabeth Cosilla, who is also working here on the international team at the College Board. She has extensive experience working with international students. And just to tell you a little bit about the College Board, we are a not-for-profit organization dedicated to connecting students to college success and opportunities. So we thank you for joining us today, and we hope you get some value out of our presentation. So with that, let me go into what we're going to talk about today. So we broke the presentation down into 5 different sections. The first section is talking about a timeline of how to prepare for the U.S. to study in the U.S., helping you organize your thoughts, organize the whole process. The second section we're going to talk about getting started. So this is where you're going to ask questions, kind of reflective questions about yourself, what you want. The third section, this is the section we're going to spend most of our time on today, which is how to choose a university. This is where most students have the most questions, so we're going to spend a lot of time on the third section. The fourth section is we are going to talk a lot about some of the free resources that College Board is able to provide specifically to international students. So we want to make you aware of those resources so you can take full advantage of the information that's out there. And finally, after you've been accepted, we want to talk about what are some steps you need to take to make sure that you are you're doing the process correctly. So before we get into the first section, I wanted to remind everyone to feel free to type in your questions during the presentation, and we will answer them. So if we don't answer them right away, we will certainly answer them when we'll take a break every 15-20 minutes or so to take a look at questions to see if we can answer them for you. If we don't get to the question during the presentation, we will email you the answer after the presentation. So feel free to, as you think of something, just type it into the text box and ask us any question you want. I see Deborah has already asked us a question, and we will definitely get to that answer, Deborah. So feel free to do that, and we will answer your questions. All right. So first section, timeline to prepare for study in the U.S. So there are a lot of things to consider when you first decide that you want to prepare or thinking about going to university in the U.S. So we wanted to take you through just an overall timeline, what it looks like, what it's going to be like. So from left to right, you can see from the very beginning to the very end on the right, there's a few steps. So first, search, gather information about U.S. universities, but even before that, asking yourself those questions about what's important to you, and we'll go through that. Thinking about English proficiency. So, do you need to take the TOEFL exam or the IELTS exam? Elizabeth, what can you say to some international students about what they need to think about when considering English proficiency?
Sure. What you're going to want to do first is look to see if it is required by the universities that you're applying to. So when we get into a little bit later questions you should ask yourself when considering university, this will be one of them. We'll talk more about the SAT, but like SATs, many universities will have a minimum score or an average where they'd like to see students test for the TOEFL. What universities will be looking for is not only will you be able to keep up with classroom conversation, lecture, take notes, dialogue, but also if you're in a small group, will you be able to participate in a classroom discussion? Will you not only be able to hear the ideas of your team, but share your ideas with them? Because I'm sure you have a lot to offer. So it's basically, we want to make sure that you'll be able to communicate effectively in an English-speaking university.
Right, exactly. So it's incredibly important. So here in the U.S., our universities and colleges consider very valuable the idea of participating in class. So that's one of the critical components. Courses, thinking about certain courses that you'd like to take, some things that a lot of universities accept here in the U.S. We'll talk about AP a little bit later. Also, admissions requirements, admissions examination. So the SAT is one of those. So we'll touch base on that a little bit as well. After that, you want to think about financing. How are you going to handle all the costs that come into play when you are going to university in the United States? And finally, when to apply, how to apply. Make sure you have all your application materials put together before you send in your application. Nowadays, they've made it a little bit easier, having most things online, so we'll go through some of those requirements as well. Decision: when will universities contact you? So after you apply, how are the universities going to contact you? When can you expect an answer from those universities? And then, of course, after you've been accepted, what are some of the steps to take to make sure that you're ready to travel to that country? So we broke it down into these two categories. So Elizabeth, will you talk a little bit about
Sure.
why we did this?
Well, going to university, whether you're going from state to state, city to city, it's an overwhelming process to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But coming across the country, there's a couple extra components that you'll want to consider when planning your timeline. So we recommend that you start thinking about this, start the search process 2 years in advance. Now, that's not to say if you're a senior that you have to abandon all hope of coming to the United States to study. Your timeline might just be a little different. So this is just a suggestion. So 2 years in advance, so sophomore, junior year, you want to start considering the fact that you want to come to the United States to study and get some of those boxes in green out of the way. Then a year before, that's when you'll start the application process, and many universities are clear about their deadlines for the application, so you won't have to do too much footwork. But that's where you're going to take the universities that you researched, pick the ones that best meet your needs, and then move forward with the application process. So just keep this timeline in mind. It's not a be-all, end-all if you're a little behind or a little ahead, but it helps space everything out so you're not overwhelmed.
Right, exactly. So at times it can get overwhelming. So it's we all have our other lives, going to school, being with family, friends, other activities that you're involved in. So this is just another thing on top of that. So if you can space it out as long as possible, that's great. So, all right, section 2 of our presentation. So before you get started, so figure out what is most important to you. We have outlined a couple questions to ask yourself, but we really recommend keeping a notebook, keeping a Word document, something in which you can have everything in one spot to write everything down, keep everything organized. But you first want to be able to define your priorities. So what are your long-term goals? What are your interests? What do you want to do in the future? Why study in another country? How do you feel about being away from your family and friends? So, Elizabeth, why is it important before any of the process starts
Sure.
to actually sit down, at least for a little bit, to think about some of these questions?
Okay, well, there are over 4,000 universities in the U.S. So this is a search before the search. So these are questions you want to ask yourself before you're even thinking about the names of schools, maybe cities. These are things that you're asking yourself. I'm going to want to go to school in the United States. What am I expecting? What am I looking for? So long-term goals. Do you want to stay in the United States, or do you plan on returning to your home country? Do you have a specific academic interest or a career field you'd like to go into? That goes into the interests. Do you want to be by the coast? Do you want to be in the central of the country? Basic questions just to kind of help narrow the next part of your search. You'll hear overwhelming as sort of a recurring word just because there are so many options. Why do you want to study in another country? Depending on where you live, family might be very close. You might spend a lot of time with them. You might see them every day. Coming across to the United States, that's going to be a little bit different. So you want to see how that will affect you personally and academically. And then, of course, you're going to want to talk to your family and friends about it, because this is a decision that goes just beyond you. So you want to make sure you have the support of your family and friends. Let them know of your ideas and just bounce some ideas off of them, because maybe they have suggestions that you didn't even think of.
Right, exactly. So this first step is what you do to get to know what you really want out of this endeavor that you're going to embark on a new country. So Our third section is what we're going to talk about most today, which is what factors to consider when choosing a university. So, when choosing a university, again, we're going to lay out some questions for you to write out very quickly. So, does the university offer a degree in the area you like to study? What are their admissions requirements? And we'll go a little bit into more detail about these questions. Is housing available on campus? What is the total cost of tuitions, fees, and living expenses? What type of support do they offer international students? So, Elizabeth, you touched on it a little bit in the
Sure.
previous section, but can you speak to a little bit more of why these questions are important to ask yourself when choosing a university?
Absolutely. So the first questions you asked yourself, you said yes to all of them, and you said, yes, I'm ready to study abroad and go to the United States. So now these are questions that you want to ask yourself once you might have narrowed down a few schools. So there's a couple of things to consider. First, you want to make sure the schools that you're looking at have the program that you would like to enter. So if you're interested in something very general like biology or English, you should have a long list of schools that will meet that criteria. If you're interested in something very specific, maybe music or art therapy perhaps, that list might be a little bit shorter. So you want to do your research to make sure the university has the program that you're interested in. The admissions requirements will vary from school to school, so you want to make sure that you're aware of those criteria, and then any tests that you need to take, any pre-prep work is accounted for. So if you need to register for an SAT exam,
Right.
if you're looking at AP courses, you want to make sure you consider those things. Cost we're going to get into later, but there is a dollar amount attached to each institution, so you want to make sure, even if you have a wide range, that the number falls within that range. And then support. Many institutions, if not all, will have either an international student affairs house or a special person on the admissions team that works primarily with international students. So they're a great person to reach out to during this stage because they could answer any nitpicky questions you might
Right.
have about the transition. Even something as basic as how will you get from the airport to campus, they're sort of your one-stop shop for these questions.
Right, exactly. So, when you ask yourself these questions, something that helps you through this process is a resource that we have here at the College Board to help you search for universities. So this is our college search site. It's called bigfuture.org, and you can go on this site. There's almost 4,000 universities who have a profile on this website. And so if you search for, I have up on the screen a screenshot of Boston University. So I did a quick search, went to bigfuture.org, searched for Boston University or universities in Boston area, brought up Boston University, so I can click on this site. So something you'll want to notice when you go to this site is I've highlighted one of the sections here on the left, and you can see, so it has a few different sections. So the at a glance section is what the main page is, kind of gives you an idea of what's on the site. There's also a deadline section, the majors, what the learning environment's like, campus life, how to apply, paying for college. Also, we want to take note that there's a specific section for international students. So if you click on this section, you'll find answers to most of your questions that pertain to international students. So definitely take advantage of this. So any university you're interested in, they have a profile on this website. It is as comprehensive as it can be. It's a summary site. Each university has their own websites to their university, but this is just a combination of all of their sites summarized individually. So one interesting aspect of this Big Future site is actually comparing universities at the same time. So here I've put together just 3 universities to give you a quick comparison of how they match up. So University of North Texas on the left, University of Illinois, and Penn State University on the right. So you can kind of see just in general what the universities have to offer. You can see on campus life, each are fairly large university campuses in suburban or urban settings. So you get an idea of what the university could be like, and then from there you can you can compare how universities are like each other. So that's an interesting resource, and we hope you can take advantage of that. Also, costs to consider. So, Elizabeth, you touched on a little bit about some of the costs. So, can you go into a little bit more detail
Sure.
about some of the costs international students need to consider when considering going to university?
Of course. So tuition and fees, that's going to be the biggest sticker price out of all of the little bullets on this list, because that's where you're paying for your education, your courses, your time spent in the classroom. Room and board is going to vary. For example, on the previous slide that Brian just showed, those three universities were split between suburban and urban areas. So there are some campuses that are called commuter campuses, and they don't offer residential life. They don't have dorms on campus. So in that case, those fees are separate because you'll be paying your own rent. So that's another thing on that list of things to consider. Do you want a campus where you can live on campus, or are you okay with finding your own apartment and living independently? If you decide to live on campus, then room and board will be another item on your bill, so to speak, and also a meal plan. Many universities will offer various different meal plans, so you won't have to go hungry while you're on campus. My undergraduate university had an all-you-can-eat, all-day, every-day meal plan, which was very convenient when you're a freshman and you don't have a kitchen, but it can also be very dangerous when you can just go eat every 5 seconds. So that's something to consider, and the price of those varies. Books and supplies. Each classroom is going to obviously require a text. They might ask you to have a laptop or computer. And also, depending on your major, you might have additional expenses. So for example, if you choose to major in art, you might have to get paintbrushes and paint. If you choose to major in photography, obviously you should have a camera so you can be prepared for the coursework. I touched on computers. Transportation, again, that goes into the campus environment. If you decide to live off campus, then you might be responsible for your own transportation. That could be buses, trains, things like that. Often, if it's a very large campus, they'll have a shuttle system, but that's usually free if you're a student. And then other campuses don't allow cars for first-year students. So these are all things that you'll want to consider. Some might influence the total cost of tuition, others might not. And then finally, personal expenses. This is where you have your social life. So whether it's buying tickets to a sporting event or going out to dinner with friends, these are just little expenses that bring you out into the campus community, allow you to socialize, and things like that. Keep in mind, if you go to school in New York City, Los Angeles, Boston, your personal expenses might be a little bit more expensive if you go to a smaller city where things are a little bit cheaper. So these are all things to consider when you're looking at schools, but also you can keep in mind that that final number, even though it might be big and intimidating, many schools offer scholarship opportunities for students, which I think we talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, so speaking of that, we want to highlight some of those, some ways you can find if the school offers some sort of aid, some assistance financially. So we've highlighted on our Big Future site the university, St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. So it's a small private university. And if you go to their international students section, so you can see on the left column, it's in blue highlighted for international students, brings up this page. And on the very bottom of the page, I've highlighted here their financial aid. So you can see on that third bullet down that the total amount they awarded last year to international students was $1,600,000, $1.7 million. So that to 90 students. So that's about $18,000 to $20,000 per student. So definitely make sure to take advantage of if there's an opportunity for you to receive assistance, financial assistance. Make sure that you visit this site or visit the page of the university or ask the admissions officers at the university what sort of financial aid do they offer to international students. So although, like you said, Elizabeth, the sticker price can be quite expensive, there's also other opportunities for that. So in terms of factors in admission, so universities consider several factors when deciding whether to admit a student. So this is something that's unique to U.S. university admissions, is they just don't consider maybe one exam score. They have many things to consider. And so we broke it down into two sections, primary factors and additional factors. So there are three primary factors that U.S. admissions officers consider when looking at your application. So the first one is quality or rigor of academic courses. Second one is academic performance or grades or marks. And the third one is test scores like the SAT, AP, your TOEFL score. So Elizabeth, on that first bullet point, quality and rigor of academic courses, what does that mean?
Essentially, we're looking to see how you challenged yourself in high school. So, for example, if you were an honors student and as a freshman you took a lot of, or a first year student, you took a lot of challenging classes and you eventually built yourself up to honors, high honors, AP courses by the time you were a senior, admissions counselors are going to view favorably upon that because it shows that you are improving as a student and we are getting you with, once you enter college, you have that high level academic experience. On the other hand, there are students that might take a lot of elective classes or easier courses, or you might even have the option to take study halls in high school. If there are a lot of those on your transcript and you're just doing the bare minimum to graduate, you won't look as strong a candidate.
Right.
So what admissions counselors are looking at is they want to make sure that the student that is applying is a strong student because that is the student that will be entering the university. Now, to that end, don't go and feel that you need to enroll in a million AP classes and then maybe not do well in them, because that's another thing you want to consider. You want to challenge yourself, but you also want to succeed in the courses that you're challenging yourself in. So find a happy medium where you're doing well in difficult courses, and then you'll make for a very strong applicant.
Right, exactly. So if you have the choice to take a more challenging path, the admissions officers like to see that you made that choice.
Exactly.
And you did that. So that's something to consider. So there's also a couple additional factors to consider that we wrote them down here. So personal statement, essay, that's something that is maybe not unique to U.S. admissions, but certainly a lot of universities require an essay. Extracurricular activities, letters of recommendation, demonstrated interest, and demonstrated insight. So Elizabeth, we talk about extracurricular activities a lot in U.S. admissions, so what does that mean?
Okay. Extracurricular activities are everything that you do outside of the classroom. So, for example, you might be an athlete, and that takes a large amount of your time. So if you're an athlete and you're able to maintain that rigorous academic schedule, then that looks great on your application. If you work part-time, a lot of students have to have a job while they're in school. So that's something else that we can consider. Clubs and organizations, especially if you've had leadership opportunities, that's something that admissions counselors like to see. Or even if it's not, I don't want to say sponsored by the school, but if you enjoy writing poetry, if you like photography, if anything you've done has ever been published, even if it's not a school-based activity, you're becoming a well-rounded student, and that means that once you arrive on your campus, you're going to give back to the campus community in the following ways.
Right, exactly. So, we put some other things down. We'll go into essay and letters of recommendation a little bit later, but demonstrated insight and demonstrated interest. So can you explain a little bit about what that means also?
So demonstrated interest is what work have you done to show that you're interested in the university. This can be anything from calling up the admissions office and speaking with an advisor, asking questions, whether it be the cost of tuition or this is what I have so far on my application, what do I need to do next? If you've met with them at a college fair or if you've had the opportunity to visit the campus, these are all examples of demonstrated interest. So you're going out of your way to learn more about this particular university. Demonstrated insight is why this university. What about Boston University, St. Edward's University, University of Texas stand out to you and you want to be a student on that campus? So for example, NYU's essay is why NYU. So they want to know what about our university speaks to you, why do you think we're a best fit? And what they suggest is if you could take why NYU or NYU out of that essay and put in another university and still have the same feeling, then you haven't properly answered the question. So you want, the insight is, I'm me, you're you, why are we a good match? Kind of like online dating. So
Right.
that's what the demonstrated insight is.
Right, exactly. So each university in the U.S. has a relatively unique offering, whatever that may be. Maybe it's they have a certain interest or specific talent in a certain major or whatever. You need to be able to demonstrate that you fit in with that culture and that system of the university. So excellent. So admissions testing for U.S. colleges and universities. So admissions test, most four-year universities and colleges require students to take an admissions test, such as the SAT or SAT subject tests. So you can get more information about that on the College Board site. We create and administer the SAT here at the College Board, so feel free to go to sat.collegeboard.org for more information about that. Also, the proof of English. We talked a little bit about it before. You may need to take an English language proficiency test. So Elizabeth, how do they know if they need to take it or not?
Sure.
Either one of these.
This comes down to, again, reaching out to the admissions representatives and looking on the website. There's typically a clear admissions page that'll break down everything for you, and then there's usually a link for international students specifically. But by the time you're preparing to take standardized tests, you should have narrowed down your list of potential universities to maybe 5, let's just say. So those are easy phone calls to make, easy things to research, visit the website, and then look on the admission site, just to make sure you have all your ducks in a row. The only other thing I would add is you want to make sure you space out your tests, because you don't want to have to go into testing overload. So for example, if you're taking AP classes, your AP exams will be in May. So then you might want to take an October and June SAT,
Right.
and then plan out your TOEFL accordingly, because if you bulk all your tests together, one of them is going to fall by the wayside and won't get the attention they deserve. So these are just things to consider once you're planning out that calendar, and that's why we recommend start thinking about this 2 years in advance, because you could use your first SAT to learn from it and then apply what you've learned on your second SAT.
Right, exactly. So we've gone over a few things, so it might be a good time to take a quick
Sure.
break to answer some questions. I know you guys have already written in a few questions already. Deborah has asked an interesting question. She is interested to know about community colleges in the U.S. And if she says, I was wondering what it takes to go from a community college in California to a university in the same states. What do they consider? Is it easier to go from a community college to a university or from high school to university? What do you recommend for Deborah?
I think it depends on your strength as a student. If you're a strong high school student, then it might be just as easy to go from high school into a four-year institution. But maybe you struggled in high school, or it's a little bit overwhelming. If you want to go to a very large institution, starting at a community college might be a good stepping stone from high school to a smaller community college and then to a larger four-year institution. So that part it varies from student to student. As far as transitioning from a community college to a college, especially in the same state, sometimes institutions will have articulation agreements with community colleges.
Right.
So there are automatic transfers. So if you take classes X, Y, and Z, that four-year institution will automatically accept them.
Right.
So you'll be able to come in at advanced standing and not waste any time going back and retaking courses. This is something, if you choose to do that, I would speak to the representatives or admissions representatives on the community college campuses, see if there are any articulation agreements with four-year institutions, and then use that as a foundation for your research.
Yeah, and four-year universities in the U.S., they really like international students who come from community colleges. Why? Because they know that they've already gone to a U.S.-style class. They're working their way through a lot of classes that they're familiar with already, and they've already been into the U.S. system, so to speak, the culture, the way of life. So they know that if you can demonstrate success in a community college, then you can also demonstrate that success at the four-year university. So Going on to another question. So, Narimene, I hope I pronounced that correctly. You want to know, are universities offering scholarships to foreign students? So, like we said earlier, get your list of universities, maybe 10, 15 universities that you really want to go to. Utilize that resource on Big Future to see if they are offering financial assistance to international students. So that is a great resource for you. So let's see some other questions. Elma Rude, you asked, do I need an IELTS score for scholarship? That's something that you need to look at this particular university's website to make sure that what are the requirements for their scholarship programs. A lot of universities, they will accept you for they will admit you to the university, and then they do a whole separate evaluation for scholarship. So make sure you get all the requirements that the scholarship needs. Let's see here. We have a couple. There was one question. Bakil is asking about European universities. So again, that would be something where you would have to go to. There are a few European universities on our Big Future site, so look for that as well. And then, in terms of master's degrees, we're really focusing on undergraduate degrees here, but the processes and procedures are fairly similar for master's degrees. So,
and once you do it for undergrad, you'll just kind of be repeating the same process for a master's degree. And sometimes it's easier because you're focused more on a specific program than just a general large university and getting your general education requirements too.
Right, exactly. So Lawin has a question. Lawin, you know, I am a graduate of UMKC Block School of Business. I went there and I got my MBA from there. So I'm going to email you after this session and answer your specific question about master's program. So, okay, so let's move on with the presentation.
Okay.
We'll continue with questions in a little bit, but we want to get through some of our slides. So, applying to U.S. universities. So, we want to give you an idea of what it's going to be like. Familiarize yourself with each college's application process. For the most part, they're pretty similar, but each one has unique things, like you mentioned NYU's essay. So make sure you know the differences between the two. I'm going to highlight here really quickly the common application. What is this? This is an online application form that is accepted by more than 450 colleges and universities in the U.S. So this is basically something that makes it a little bit easier. So Elizabeth, why does it make it easier for students if they know that a university uses the common application?
Well, what's great about the common application is if you're applying to 4 schools that honor the common application, you only have to fill the form out once, and then you can send it to all 4 of those schools. However, sometimes those schools will come back to you with supplement questions that reflect back to that demonstrated interest and insight that we talked about earlier. So the common application will have essentially that fill-in-the-blank information, name, birth date, address, and so on. And then you'll be able to send that to 4 schools, for example, and then you'll just have supplementary questions or maybe an essay. So at least you've got that bulk part out of the way, and then you have more time to focus on the supplement question.
Right.
So it's kind of, again, to use the phrase, one-stop shop application source for your first round of sending out interest.
Right, right. It just saves a lot of time when you have to write your address, your name over and over again, so it's nice. Going back to this slide, exactly what you said, Elizabeth, the third bullet point here, each institution may add questions or essays to the application. So make sure that you're looking at the institution's specific requirements for the questions or the essays. In terms of application deadlines, you may run into some of these terms: regular admission, early decision, early action, rolling admission. So Elizabeth, what can you say? What do these terms mean?
Sure.
What do you recommend students do when they see these different terms?
Okay, so let's just start with early decision and early action. Early decision is it's a binding decision which means that if you are accepted into the university, if they can offer you the amount of financial aid that you need to attend, you're guaranteeing them that you will come. So you're making a binding agreement. I start with this one because this is typically what students will choose to do for first choice schools. I absolutely positively want to attend University A, and if I get in, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm attending.
Right.
Now, similar to that is early action. Early action allows you to apply early, get your decision early, however, it's non-binding.
Okay.
So this is a great option for students that maybe you're in love with two schools, or you have a first choice school, but you're not sure if you're going to get in, or you want to still keep your options open, but you want to know early and you're ready to apply. So early action is a great choice for you. I applied early action to my first choice school. I remember hearing back early, and then I had a much more peaceful senior year because I knew where I was going.
Right.
For the rest of you, if you're not sure, you're torn between a lot of schools, or maybe you have second and third choices, you would apply regular admission. And this is where a majority of students find themselves applying. It gives you more time to consider your schools, complete your applications, but you're still heard early enough that you have time to smoothly make the transition to your new school. Regular admission is non-binding as well, so you can sit on different decisions, and then it also gives you time if you want to take another look at a campus, go for a second tour, or speak one-on-one with an advisor. It gives you the opportunity to do so. Rolling admission is pretty much what it says. Institutions are accepting applications on a rolling, consistent basis. So whereas for regular admission there's an application due in December, if you miss that December deadline and you're applying to a rolling admission school, that's okay. Things to keep in mind though with rolling admission. You still want to honor some sort of timeline with these schools, because even if you're going to wait to apply, other students are applying and seats are being filled. So by waiting to the last minute, you might not get in for the first semester, you might be put on a wait list, something like that.
Right.
Second, if you wait until the last minute and then you find out at the last minute, that shortens your transition. So University of Michigan, I believe, has rolling admission. So for a student living in Michigan, applying late and hearing late might not be that big of a deal. But if you're applying from China and you hear at the last minute, then you've kind of cut your transition window in half and you might feel a little bit rushed.
Right.
So, but rolling admission is still a great option. And this is another thing where you want to check with the school's website and speak to an admissions counselor if you have specific questions.
Right, exactly. So moving on to, I want to talk briefly about letters of recommendation and essay requirements. So this is something a bit unique to the U.S. admissions system. So most schools require letters of recommendation from your teachers or a counselor or some sort of person that can speak to a little bit more of what you're about. So we always recommend giving your teachers or whoever you have write your letters of recommendation. Give them some time to complete the recommendation, and for the most part, a lot of schools have online systems to do that, or they have to send it via email or mail. In terms of essay requirements, so many schools will add their own essay requirement to the common application, like we said before. And then, of course, we always recommend checking the specific requirements of the school to which you apply to make sure you're not writing an essay that's just so generic. But do you have a recommendation or two about what students could write for their essays?
Sure. Just to quickly touch on letters of recommendation first, choose a teacher that knows who you are. You don't necessarily have to pick the principal or headmaster of your school, but you want to choose a teacher that can speak to you not only as a student, but as a person.
Right.
And they can add elements that aren't already seen on your transcript. So you don't want to choose a teacher that will write a couple of sentences saying that you got an A in their class. You want them to fill a couple of paragraphs about your personality, what you bring to the high school, things that you're involved in, those extracurricular activities we talked about earlier. Sometimes it even helps if you provide them with a resume or a brag sheet, so they have a couple different areas to pull from.
Yeah.
As for essay requirements, a couple of things that you should know are, first, make sure you read the question and the requirements. In my previous institution, the essay was supposed to be 300 words. If we got 300 pages, right off the bat you're telling me that you didn't even read the directions.
Right.
So those are things to consider. Make sure you stick to the topic. Sometimes it's not why this university, but it's choose a literary character that means something to you, or if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be? So make sure you think about the answers that you want and proofread them. Nothing is more tedious than trying to read a very well-written essay that's littered with typos and grammatical errors. So you want to make sure you and then several someones take a look at that essay before you submit it. So those are just a couple of things. Feel free to be creative. Admissions people are not robots, so if you have an exciting opening line or you want to pull from a really interesting experience, by all means do so, because you want to catch their attention and show them that you're more than just an academic transcript and test scores.
Right, exactly. So we have talked about a lot so far, and you may not have ever written an essay about yourself or your life before, so we wanted to take this opportunity to let you know of resources that we have available and other free resources out there online or within your countries that can help you out through this process. You're not alone. So first of all, we've heard a little bit about College Board resources, but where should you start for resources? So just take into consideration that slide that we had before, primary factors and additional factors. So if you have a list of those factors and you've got everything kind of right there organized, see if you can get some additional resources to help you out filling out some of those letters of recommendation, some of those essays, maybe some help preparing for the SAT, things like that. So first, we want to point out again on the Big Future site that we have available where you can search for colleges and universities. Each university actually has on this site what they require for SAT, TOEFL, AP. So if you take an AP course, you can see here that this is a screenshot of a random university on the Big Future site, and you can see that they offer credit. So if you take an AP class in high school, they give you credit when you get admitted to that university. Also, we want to point out on the Big Future site, the SAT section. So this is really interesting. You can actually see of the current first-year students at that university, what was their average SAT score? You know, what do you need to get into or be considered part of this group? So first of all, the SAT is broken down into 3 sections. This first section I've highlighted here in orange. It's the critical reading section. So you can see for this university, their average scores were in that range. I think it says 500 to 680. I can't quite see it, but you can see what they require for math. It's a little bit higher for math. So their average students are scoring really well in math. And then you can see for writing as well, right below that. That section below all of those is, and highlighted in orange right now, is percent of freshmen in each SAT score range. So this is a critical reading section. So what percentage of their first year students now scored in that top tier of scores, the 700 to 800? Looks like 19% scored of the first year students attending that university are scoring in that range. But a majority of students are right there in the middle, scoring between 500 to 700 in critical reading. So you know when you get your SAT scores back, you can see what you scored and you can kind of compare what current students at that university are like compared to your score, and you can see what type of opportunity you may have for that. So that's another resource there out, so that you're just not saying to yourself, okay, I got my SAT score, but what is this good? Is this bad?
Sure.
Is this normal? So that's good. Also, we have a website that's specifically designed for international students. So it's international.collegeboard.org. So if you go here, you can play around with all the resources that we have available. So I've highlighted here in this orange box, I clicked on Study in the United States, which brings this drop-down menu of things that you can see. So a lot of the things that we've already talked about are on this website, so feel free to visit this page and use this website and all the resources that it has to offer. Education USA. So Education USA is an excellent resource. We highly recommend international students utilize Education USA offices around the world. So we've highlighted here their website, but Elizabeth, can you tell them what is the Education USA office?
Sure.
How they can contact someone at the Education USA office, and what types of resources are available for them?
Sure. Well, Education USA helps students, and they provide up-to-date, accurate information assisting students come to the United States for education. So essentially, this is a great place for you to go because that's the population that you are. International students that would like to come to the United States. Some of you might already be familiar with Education USA, as they have several advising centers around the country where they work with students, they walk them through the admissions process, they help provide them with opportunities, mentoring, counseling, and even if your parents have questions, they'll work with you to that end as well. So it's a great way to find the most recent trends in education and admissions, to find out, help you with that best fit. They have college fairs around the world, so you can look to see if there's a fair in your area where you can learn more about schools in the United States. So this is a great opportunity because our schools will come to you, and then you'll be able to get those brochures, and you'll get to speak with an advisor and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a good website to explore, and you can certainly search by country to see if there's an advising center or a contact near you. And many of them have studied in the United States, so they could talk about their experiences and assist you with the process on a personal level.
Right. So this is an excellent resource. They have offices in many cities all over the world, so we really recommend going to their website, seeing if you can find an office that's near you, and making an appointment, going in to talk to them, giving them a call. Their job is to help international students learn more about studying in the U.S. So
Sure.
it's a great resource for students to use, like Elizabeth said. So again, take advantage of free resources. We wanted to mention a few more here. So we mentioned Big Future a lot. We highlighted that a few times. We mentioned SAT and SAT subject tests. There's a lot of resources on our website to help you prepare for those exams. At the very bottom left, you'll see the PSAT/NMSQT. So this is our preliminary SAT exam, which is very easy to use, very inexpensive, very easy to take. It helps prepare you for what you might see on the SAT, and the resources after the exam. After you take the exam, you'll get your score, and you'll get incredible amount of free resources to see how you performed, what questions you did well on, what questions you didn't do well on. It gives you a nice pathway to help you prepare for the SAT, help you prepare for what universities to study in. So we really recommend taking advantage of that as well. So also one more before we move on to our final section is Student Search Service. So Elizabeth, what is Student Search Service,
Sure.
and why should students consider using it?
Well, what's great about Student Search Service is it can introduce you to universities that you've never even heard of before, but ultimately turn out to be a good fit. So when you take the SAT exam, you can opt in to this service, and then it will take a look at your credentials and schools will send you brochures from their institutions. So coming internationally, you might have your heart set on big cities like New York, Boston, Los Angeles, Houston. However, there's a lot of wonderful hidden gems in the middle of the country in cities that I've never even heard of. But they're great schools, so what will happen is Student Search will look at your schools, your scores, look at your interests, and then these schools that you might not have heard of will send you information about them, introducing you to new institutions, new opportunities that match your credentials. So it opens up a lot of opportunities for you, a lot of doors, introduces you to some new places. So that way, if your search list is a little short or you haven't really found that best match yet, this will allow you to be introduced to some other schools.
Right, exactly. And like you said before, universities are looking to diversify their student body. So all the students that attend the university, they want to make sure that they are a representation of the world population. So if they want to find a student in East Asia or South America or the Middle East, they can use this College Board search to find you. So that's why this service is very valuable for both universities and for you as a student. So our final section, we'll close off with what to do next after acceptance. So you've been accepted, congratulations to the university. And what are some of the processes you need to make sure that you are taking into account for that? So we have this slide up, getting organized. So after you've been admitted, there are a few important steps to take. So Elizabeth, what do you recommend students to do after they've been accepted to the university to make sure that they're ready to travel to the university?
Well, the first step is to hang your acceptance letter up on your refrigerator in your bedroom on a bulletin board so you could look at it every day and get psyched for the next 4 years.
Yes.
Some of the things on this list you may already have. For example, you may already have a passport. You may already be aware of your health insurance requirements and policies, but this is your last minute checklist where you don't want to skimp on this because you don't want to come so far and then you're ready to board your plane and you realize at the last minute you're missing something. So most of these are your responsibility, but like we've discussed, there's always an international office or an admissions representative that you can speak to in case you don't understand something or you're missing something. So for example, number 7, if you're expecting a financial aid package or reward and you haven't received it, this is the time that you make that call to the office and they'll be able to fill you in on any information. So this is the home stretch of paperwork and documents and filing you need to do before you get on that plane, but it's a very important part of the process because it's really what allows you to be an overseas student as far as paperwork is concerned. So not to spend too much time on this slide, but just take a glance at it, see what you need to do, and then move forward from there.
Right, exactly. So if the universities have accepted you, they want you to come to their campus. So they are there to support you in whatever questions you may need. So be sure to take advantage of their resources. They want you to come. They will make it as easy as possible for you to get into their university. So be sure to utilize them. You're not alone in this process. So there is a question about, is the presentation going to be available afterwards? Yes. So the recording is going to be available. If you have, if you want the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to have an email at the very end where you can email your request for the PowerPoint. We can send that to you as well. So, okay, so to finish off our presentation, learn more. So we just want to reiterate some of the things that we've talked about before. Attend college fairs in your area. We talked about Education USA. They host universities that come to your city or your area. Speak with an admissions representative. Call them, email them. Ask about financial aid opportunities. Don't miss out. There might be some that you may not be aware of. Talk to students in your country. So there might be some alumni of that university or maybe alumni of any U.S. university, and you might be able to talk to them. Some universities have networks of alumni, and so you can ask admissions officers, hey, do you know of anyone that has graduated from your university that lives in my country?
Sure.
Can I talk to them? So don't be afraid to ask that question. And then, of course, use College Board resources like Big Future and our College Board International site. So thank you for attending. We're going to take a couple more questions before we leave, but I wanted you to make you aware of some of the resources that we have. So if you have a question, like let's say you would like to see the PowerPoint presentation afterwards, I know a couple questions that have come up with that. Please email international@collegeboard.org. We will send you the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll answer any question you may have. If we haven't answered any of your questions on this presentation, if we run out of time, please feel free, email that. Elizabeth and I, look at that inbox every day, and so we will be sure to answer your questions. So that second bullet point, plan to study in the U.S. or around the world, take advantage of our international site, Big Future, and then of course SAT, and the final bullet, AEP, where you can learn about that. So let's take a couple of questions. that we've written in so far. There's a few questions about graduate study. Prachi has a question about GRE, and you sent your scores. However, I will be applying next year. Okay, will your scores still be valid if you? So let's say this question kind of applies to a lot of things. SAT,
most standardized tests.
TOEFL. If you've taken one of these exams, be sure to look on how long that they are valid for. I know the GRE, if I'm not mistaken, is valid for 3 years. So, but definitely if it's TOEFL or SAT.
Make sure you just know the expiration date on the exam and try to move forward with the application within that, because then you don't have to worry about taking the test again.
Right, exactly. So usually if you take one of the tests, the TOEFL or the SAT, I don't know if maybe the TOEFL is just good for a year or two, but definitely look at how long it's good for. So let's take a look at a couple other questions. The letter of recommendation, where is that one? Down like this. Okay. So Anastasia has a question about, may another person write a letter of recommendation? If so, how is it exactly? So,
well, a letter of recommendation can be written by most people, except you wouldn't ask, for example, a parent to write your letter of recommendation, because obviously they're going to have wonderful things to say about you because you're their child. So you want to ask someone in academics. That would be the best first choice. However, if, for example, you've been spending a lot of time volunteering in a hospital and one of the doctors is willing to write a letter, that's a great place for a supplementary letter. So if a school is usually very specific about who they want the authors to be. So they might write, we would like 3 letters of recommendation, 2 from teachers and 1 from maybe a former boss or supervisor. So those are things to consider, but family members unfortunately can't write them, but I'm sure they would be glowing letters of recommendation.
Yes. So there's a few questions about scholarships for international students. So we touched on this a little bit, but a couple things to remember for scholarships. One, make sure that you look on each university's website to see if they offer scholarships to international students. 2, take advantage of bigfuture.org. If they offer scholarships to international students, they have written how much they've offered last year and to how many students. So that's a great resource to see. Sometimes they'll offer it to all international students. Sometimes they'll offer it to 0 international students. So that's a good, bigfuture.org is a really good place to see, if you're looking at a specific university, which ones offer financial aid. Also, Big Future allows you to search for only those universities that offer financial aid. So you can get rid of all of those extra universities that are not going to be offering financial aid to you, so you don't have to busy yourself looking through all of those.
And to add to that, there are typically 2 kinds of scholarships that you can consider. There's need-based scholarships and merit-based scholarships, so you might qualify for one or both of them. So need-based scholarships are going to be considered based on financial need, your family's income, and things like that. Merit-based scholarships can be awarded to students because of academics, outstanding leadership, athletics. So when you're reading the description, you can also see, well, this also applies to me, and you might be able to apply to both. So keep in mind those 2 different kinds of scholarships, because some might be international specific, where others might be merit-based, based on leadership, and open to any applicant at the university.
Right. So there are a couple questions about specific programs. So what universities are good at? There's a question about biotechnology. There's another question about agriculture. So we recommend going to that Big Future site and just searching for biotechnology. And then you'll see a list of universities that come up that have specialized programs in those areas of your interest. So that's definitely another good resource to use. So we're just out of time.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate your questions and listening in to our presentation. We look forward to hearing from you. If you have another question, please feel free to email us at international@collegeboard.org, and we hope to hear from you. So good luck and best wishes to your college search in the future. Okay? Bye-bye.